Good evening. I'd like to call the September 8th, 2020 regular City Council meeting to order. I'd like to point out that this meeting is being hosted through live stream on the city's website and by teleconference for public comment. The city staff is at an off-site location participating through video conference. If you are joining through teleconference, please remember to mute your phone to prevent noise interference until you provide your public comment. Due to the structure of this meeting, I'd like to remind council to have the microphones turned on and positioned so the audience can hear. Deputy City Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Percival?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Here.
Mayor Brown?
Here.
Thank you.
And tonight we have the pleasure of actually having a representative from the Interfaith Council, Rhonda Tvestin. Preston.
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, typo here.
It's one of those names.
And you'll provide the invocation, after
I will.
which Mayor Pro Tem Krupa will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Thank you. As we turn inward to the God of our understanding, may we accept as this community that everything done here tonight is for the highest good of the citizens of Hemet. We know that the City Council is creating for all of us a harmonious living and working environment that continues to grow and to prosper. I give thanks for all that is and all that will be, and I know it to be so. As I say, and so it is. Amen.
Please remain standing and join with me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. Moving on to item 10, communications from the public. Anyone wishing to speak during public comment or on a particular item will be required to fill out a speaker form and turn it into the city clerk. If you're here and present, do that. There's a temporary 2-minute per person time limit for all general public comments on non-public hearing items. All who wish to speak, including council members and staff, need to be recognized by the mayor before speaking. Members of the public shall comply with the adopted rules of decorum, resolution number 4545, a copy of which can be requested through the city clerk's office. You may also fill out a form and submit your comments online at www.hemetca.gov, and your comments will be read aloud. However, submittal must be done before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. For those who wish to join by teleconference, you'll be able to do so by calling 888-585-9008. When prompted, dial 768-176-038. And a reminder, if you're joining by teleconference, please mute your phone to prevent noise interference until you're given time to provide your comment. And remember to state your name and the item about which you're commenting. So item 10A, public comment for items listed on the agenda. Deputy City Clerk, do we have any electronic comments submitted to be read aloud for consent or discussion items?
No, Mayor, there were no electronic comments submitted.
Okay. Do we have anyone on teleconference wishing to speak on these items?
I've unmuted the public teleconference line.
Just for the record, Dan Boyd, D.R. Horton, applicant for 11A, in case there's any questions that need to be asked of me.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any speaker slips submitted for items listed on the agenda?
No, Mayor, there were no speaker slips for items on the agenda.
Okay. Moving on to item 10B, public comment for items not listed on the agenda but within jurisdictional matter. Deputy City Clerk, are there any electronic comments submitted to be read aloud for non-agendized items?
No, Mayor, there are no electronic comments.
Are there any members participating through the teleconference who would like to comment on any non-agendized items?
There are no other members of the public on the line.
Okay. Do we have any speaker slips submitted?
Yes, Mayor, there are several requests to speak. The first one is from Pat Gregory. After Pat Gregory is Matt Thornton.
Good evening.
Good evening. Through a request for documents, I have received the city's expenditure, Pat Gregory. I have received the city's expenditure and revenue reports for Measure U. Based on the city's numbers, there is a Measure U balance of $12.7 million as of June 30th, 2020. However, the proposed 2021 budget that was approved by only 3 council members shows an estimated beginning Measure U balance of $6.4 million. That's over a $6 million discrepancy in one day without an explanation. I listened into last week's Measure U Oversight Committee hearing, and I am concerned. Mr. Lopez is repeating a misrepresentation of the city's financial health. He stated that we have a surplus for the first time in years. This statement is inaccurate for several reasons. One, using Measure U funds to pay for normal general fund expenditures is an express violation of this council's promise as identified in Resolution 4731. Without Measure U money, there would be in the neighborhood of a $5 million deficit. What that means is that Mr. Lopez, instead of focusing on ways to reduce the actual deficit, is using Measure U money for purposes not intended. Mr. Lopez thinks that it's legally allowable to use Measure U tax for whatever he wants because it's a general tax. What Mr. Lopez is forgetting is that he has an ethical obligation to uphold the City Council's policies, one of which is using Measure U money for the enhancement of public safety. Using Measure U for normal, ongoing public safety expenses is not using Measure U for the enhancement of public safety as promised by this council. Mr. Lopez is playing with words and ignoring the enhancement requirement of Measure U to the detriment of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gregory.
Up next is Matt Thornton, followed by Mary Ann Derwin.
Hi. Mask off. Hold it down, okay. Sorry, I'm nervous.
It's okay.
How you doing? I'm Matt Thornton. I've lived in this valley this time since 2002. Raised 4 children here. Have 4 grandchildren who live here in the valley. I am Hemet through and through. And I decided that 2020 was going to be the last year that I signed the back of a check and decided I wanted to sign the front of a check. I wanted to be my own business and run my own thing and set a legacy up for my own children. And so I had planned on opening a restaurant. Unfortunately, as we all know, COVID hit, and that made a lot of changes for a lot of people. It also changed my direction a little bit, and I bought a food truck. I have poured my savings into building a food truck and building a nice business and a nice truck. I have gone through all of the county regulations and the state regulations to get my food truck approved. In April of 2013, Riverside County approved food trucks to work in the county. I have reached out over the last few weeks because my truck is almost done and I'm almost ready to be wheels in the ground to cities to get approval to work in cities. And unfortunately, Hemet, my hometown where I wake up and go to bed every night, and again, raised my children here, and they all went to school here, and they all went to college in San Jacinto, said no. They only allow us to do food trucks here under special events or under farmers markets. Now, the problem being is that there is no special events right now, and I have, again, like I said, 4 children that I'm trying to help maintain a life. So it's been tough coming, and I don't want it to keep coming that way, right? So I'm asking for us to relook at it as a city, what it would take to get a food truck approved in this city to work. I am a recognized business by Riverside County. I'm a recognized business by the state of California. I have my housing and development approval. I have my plan approval through the health department, and I'm waiting for my truck to finish to get my final approval. My commissary, because each food truck has to have a commissary that you work through. My commissary is the Tillo restaurant right here in town. I buy my bread through them. If you guys remember Maria, who was a dear friend of mine. Mark Antoni was the first person I met in town.
Sorry to cut you off, Matt,
Okay.
but your time has expired. May I ask that you confer with our Community Development Director, HP? He's sitting in the very back row there.
Yes.
And then maybe he can give you some guidance.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
After Mary Ann Darrowin is Roy McDaniel.
Hello, good evening, Council. I haven't spoken a couple months, but actually I am here today too on a positive note. I want to congratulate our police officers, and I'm not sure exactly where the money came from, if it came from the Measure U to put up the new stolen car IDs for the license plates. I don't know how they're doing it. I wish if it was Measure U money, if someone would say something, because the question of where the Measure U money is being spent is a big question. So if that money was used to do that, it would be nice if it was put out somewhere that we did do that and we did use the Measure U money for part of what we said we would. Not that my cars have been stolen, but I think it's a great concept. I'm happy to see that Hemet is finally moving up with going forward and being on top of some stuff. I mean, 23 cars in a week is amazing, and they're doing an amazing job just yesterday. I mean, I think these people that are getting their cars back with little to no damage are happier than they could ever be, rather than finding their cars out in the desert somewhere stripped. So I just wanted to thank the council or whoever has managed to put this together, because I think it is a real positive for Hemet, and it's showing that we really are moving forward and we are coming up and trying to be in the 20th century and not this little podunk town. So thank you all very much if you all voted on it, who's ever came up with it. But if you did use Measure U money, please make sure that you put that out there so we all know that at least some of that money is going towards a good cause. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and we'll make sure that gets back to Chief Poos. It is very nice to see that kind of innovation being brought to bear against some of the crime problems here.
After Roy McDaniel is Richard Howell.
Good evening, Council members. My name is Roy McDaniel. I'm actually supposed to be last in my group of 4 parents, but you're going to get me as the conclusion right now. Like I said, I'm Roy McDaniel. I'm a retired United States Marine. I'm a wounded warrior. I have a volunteer service medal from the Marine Corps. I have a bachelor's in business management, a master's in business administration, and I'm a middle school teacher. And I'm here to talk to you tonight about accountability, and that accountability, or lack thereof, from the Hemet Youth Baseball Program. This program and its board is operating unethically. They took the fields from us after we were the ones, when I say we, my parents, my kids, my 12-year-olds, my 6- and 7-year-olds, we cleaned every single field. We ran a fundraiser tournament, and that's kind of beside the point, but we raised money for the kids. After that, they took the fields away from us, And they run tournaments every single weekend now for about 6 weeks. And I'm sure that their total is in the tens of thousands of dollars, but yet they have no legal nonprofit account. Their business, Hemet Youth Baseball, it doesn't exist. The names on the contract from the city, those people aren't around anymore. So my accountability that I want is for them to be taken from control of those fields. I want to create a legit board with the parents from the community and do things the right way. Because for years and years and years, it hasn't been done the right way. And I think that we are the group to step in and do it. Before I let you guys go, I just want to say, I want to quote Ronald Reagan, Ronald Reagan said that the greatest leaders don't necessarily do the greatest things. The greatest leaders get his people to do the greatest things. And that's what I want to do. I want to get my parents to do the greatest things, my coaches, my umpires, the community of Hemet to do great things, all for the kids and all for Hemet. So I'm pretty sure that's my time. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your service as well.
Thank you.
After Richard Howell is Jeff Mapsteed.
Hello, council members. My name is Richard Howell. I have lived in Hemet for 30 of my 34 years. The Hemet Youth Organization has always been nothing short of failed attempts at youth sports. Their fields have never truly been maintained, except for the grassed outfield, which is taken care of by the city. The organization has always carried a bad reputation for our city and youth sports. These fields were neglected for so long that weeds, vandalism, and transients have taken over. When Coach McDaniel informed us that we were able to use the fields to practice on, as well as host tournaments, as parents, we were elated to get our boys back out on the field. Therefore, we as a team took it upon ourselves to help with painting over graffiti, picking up trash, weeding, and filling in holes on the fields. These 12-year-old boys worked before and after practice, as well as on weekends to get the fields to a playable standard. We wanted these fields to represent us as a team of honesty and hard work. This was an act of good faith to the Hemet Youth president, who said multiple times that he was going to hire someone to do what we ended up doing. He never followed through with that. We then went on to host 2 successful tournaments over a course of 2 weekends. Once Hemet Youth members saw how well the tournaments brought in revenue, they suddenly ripped the rug out from under us, meaning we were no longer allowed to host our own tournaments, and our hard work was unrecognized. Coach McDaniel, however, rewarded our boys with new wood bats, very nice wood bats, I might add, and new uniforms for their hard work. One of the Hemet Youth members also showed up at one of our practices after all of this occurred, was very disrespectful to parents as well as our coaches in front of our very impressionable children. I don't believe those are the kinds of people we want leading our children. I stand behind Coach McDaniel 100% and feel very strongly he would be a great pillar for our community, and I think it's time for a change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
After Jeff Mapsteed is Doris McCoy.
My name is Jeff Mapstead. I've been in the Valley for off and on most of my life. I played Hemet Youth baseball when I was young, and it is hard to see what it has become. The way the fields are and just the way it's being ran. Our team first showed up there for a wiffle ball game. We went up there. They used to have a little guy field. And it was perfect for wiffle ball, kids versus parents, just kind of changed the pace for us. And after that, Coach Roy McDaniel had said that we were able to use the fields for practice. So after that, I know Ricky just said we cleaned the field up. We got one cleaned up for us to practice on, and then we asked if we could hold a tournament, so we got a couple more cleaned up. Kids are working, parents are working around the clock, weekends, before and after practices, doing all kinds of stuff. And the Hemet Youth Board had said that they were going to help us out. That fell through. They never showed up. All they did was kind of unlock the doors for us, and we took it from there. We got 2 fields ready for our first tournament. We had 12 teams. The second tournament, we had 6 fields ready, and I believe we had 26 teams, something like that, and that was a great success. And after the board had seen that it was a success, that they kind of, I don't know if they saw dollar signs or what, but they kind of took it over, and we had another tournament scheduled. They took it from us, let a group from Orange County host a tournament on that same weekend because I believe they were paying more. These tournaments, these travel ball tournaments, they're pretty lucrative. We had a good fundraiser for our team, and you can charge quite a bit. Teams will pay $350 to $550 per team to play for the weekend for 3 games. Not exactly sure the dollar amount he's charging for these guys, but there's been 4 weekends in a row of these tournaments, and the place is packed. And afterwards, we practice Mondays, and the place is a mess. We cleaned up, our group took care of that field, stayed late Sunday night, almost till dark, cleaning it up, and it's just a shame what's happened with that, and it would be nice to have a change there, and maybe new board members, and take care of it, and I think Roy McDaniel would be a good leader for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for your comments.
The last request to speak is from Doris McCoy.
Good evening, council members. So I'm also here with a concern regarding the Hemet Youth Baseball Fields. I'm a mom from the team. We recently held a tournament there that, can I pull this down? That they offered to our coach for a fee, and we did clean up the field so that we could hold that there, and we were fine with that. They have continued to hold tournaments there of their own since then, and we thought at first, well, it's their space, they can do what they like. They're also renting out the fields for practices weekly. However, we've since found out that they are suspended by the state, so they're not supposed to be conducting any business, and that the current board members' names are not even on the current contract. So I'm not sure what that means. We would just like to see a legitimate board of directors take control and turn the facility into what it should be for the kids of this valley. I remember many years ago, my son, when he was really small, played there, and it was so much different than what it is now. The kids deserve a clean, safe place to play baseball and softball. So we would like, if Coach Roy, or if you thought just a better board could come in, upgrade the fields, get the snack shack up to code, because I can tell you that I personally pulled 2 dead mice out of there the weekend before they held their next tournament. And it still smells like dead animals there when we go for practice. So I don't know what died and where, but the smell is, you can smell it outside. So that's not good. And they were using the snack shack when they were holding their tournament, so I don't even want to know what people were being fed. So we'd like to see lights added to the field. Hemet Youth has never had lights. So when it's dark, people of this valley whose children play baseball have to go, like Diamond Valley, have to go somewhere out of town to play. And I mean, why couldn't we just play here? This is where we live. And so I just came to ask you if you will consider replacing the current board, and ask that we would be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois, for your comments and your suggestions. Obviously, since this is not an agendized item, council's not at liberty to discuss it, but I saw our city manager taking notes based on comments from all the speakers, and I think we'll be hearing back from staff on addressing your questions.
Thank you so much.
There are no more requests to speak.
Okay, moving on to our next item is a public hearing, and we do have a public hearing this evening. So the procedures for public hearing, staff will provide a report and clarification of items presented. The public hearing will be open for comments for those in favor of or in opposition to the item, followed by rebuttal to any comments made. Public hearing will then be closed, and the city manager may respond to any questions raised by the public. The public will not have an opportunity to respond. Discussion will then be brought back to the city council for direction or action. So do we have a report on this item? It's like our city engineer is here.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I was just trying to log in here. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, I had a map I wanted to share with everybody. I hope everybody can see that, but if not, let me know. I can always enlarge it for you too. Again, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to share with you, this is a public hearing for an ordinance. This is a public hearing to have a modification to conditions of approval for tentative track map 36892, which was approved by council back on August 27th of 2017. This particular track map 36892, which is in the lower right-hand corner of the red box, is part of a larger development called River Oaks Ranch. And you can see that's 4 other maps sequentially numbered 89, 90, 91, and 92 in between Stetson Avenue and Chambers Street. With this just to give you a little bit of background, with the entire development of these 4 maps, it's about 300 units of single-family residential homes. This development will also widen Chambers Street, which is currently a one-way road to the west. It will actually have 2 lanes, one in each direction. All of the tentative track maps that you see up there, with the exception of 9-2, which is the one that we're talking about tonight, all of them were approved with the idea that stormwater would be stored on site, mitigated per the City of Hemet drainage manual. 9-2 was designed to not accommodate on site. However, based on further research, can be accommodated on site. Working with the developer, D.R. Horton, they are looking to modify this condition here with the idea that all of the runoff from the 100-year 3-hour storm event will be maintained on site on all 4 of these track maps. Currently, 3 do have that, but the 4th one of 9-2 will be modified to retain all that water on site. So the reason for this request is Chambers Street experiences drainage concerns now that are not attributable to this development. There is no nexus between the development of these 4 maps and the drainage issues that are outstanding out there already. So what we wanted to do was have this development still come through, modify their development to, they're actually going to lose a couple lots, so they can enlarge their basins on site to make sure that they retain their water on site. So with that, my recommendation tonight is just to open the public hearing, hear any testimony, and then at the completion, at your suggestion would be to adopt the resolution that modifies the condition of approval. With that, I'm here for any questions.
Okay. Council have any questions of staff?
I got a couple. I remember seeing this when this has been years, so I was on planning when this came before the Planning Commission. The water drainage issues that you talk about that aren't related to this site, but there's usually when it rains, there's a significant flow going down Chambers on the south side of the street, which causes significant erosion. When the development next to Seven Hills Golf Course was developed, they made changes to how that water drained, because there's a retention basin right there to on the southwest corner of the lot adjacent to the one we're talking about tonight. And now that drainage basin doesn't fill, or it gets very little water because the water goes somewhere else. It's nice to know that they're going to address the water problem, or not water problems, but the water issues on their track to keep it on there. That's good, but as far as there's going to be additional mitigation that's handled on Chambers Street for the water, that's especially if they're going to be widening Chambers through that area. Is that going to be addressed?
With this development, no. They'll be widening it to the south, not with curb and gutter or anything of that sort. That water that drains off to that side currently from the existing area of yellow and blue, that will continue to drain over there. The issues that are present from that yellow and blue area are much larger than this development. And having the development put that drainage in is not cost effective for this project, and also it forces the city to have to contribute a certain percentage of the storm drain that would be in the street.
So is any of the drainage on any of these tracks going to be going into that basin that's at that southwest corner?
No, because the 100-year 3-hour storm event, which is required to be maintained on site, is being maintained within each one of those 4 tracks.
Okay. And we don't know when the drainage is going to... My concern is that we don't have another CL basin on the south side of Hemet, because that's going to now, in turn, affect property value in that area, and there's going to be flooding issues, and I want to avoid that.
And if I can answer a concern on that, I do hear your concern. The one thing you have to keep in mind, too, is that Salt Creek, as I mentioned down, or I pointed out in the lower left-hand corner there, that's where all this runoff essentially gets to when it's done. At the southwest corner, basically at the northeast corner of Lyon and Chambers, that basin supposedly was designed to collect the water from the tracks to the north of there. Well, I don't think it really does at this point based on what we could see out there. So if this development, if we move over to the 4 tracks, if this development was to install any kind of drainage facility, all it would do would be essentially taking the yellow and the blue area, taking it and putting it into that basin that you mentioned is at the south part of the development, northeast corner of Lyon and Chambers. That's all it does. The real issue, is getting it down to Salt Creek. That's the concern that has to be addressed, and is a much larger picture, or much larger project to be looked at. And I don't know if flood control has it in their sites. I believe they do, because we're working on the MDP right now. I just don't know when they have it in their sites to address coming from Salt Creek up a little further.
And that was my next question, is flood control looking at that to be able to fix all of that?
I'm pushing on that. So coming up in December, January, is actually the public hearing for the CIP projects that they have once a year. And we submit a list of projects. And
is that going to be here in these chambers again? Or are they doing it somewhere else?
Oh, I honestly don't know. I thought they regularly rotate depending on where they're at, but I could find out. I just got they don't get CDs anymore. They get the flash drives. So it's on the flash drive. I just haven't looked at it yet because I got it just today. But I don't know exactly where we're going to be being held at.
Okay. That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mike hit on the big concern with areas like that. Off the top of your head, do you know who owns the property south of Chambers?
MWD.
I thought, and it's part of one of their parcels they're selling, correct? So my next is kind of a theoretical question. That's all in the city limits of Hemet. Would future development on those acreages have to basically go into a storm drain or flood control DIF fund or something to help offset the cost for getting all of that water eventually down to Salt Creek?
That's a very good question, and I didn't get into it because I didn't want to speculate. But based on the research that I've done and understanding what's happening, working with Community Development Department, MWD, as you pointed out too, they are shopping this property, and we have received some input from potential developers. So that's the speculation part of it. The part that I would like to see is that as that comes through, there will be contributions by the city in order to pay for this. But what I would envision is that as that area south of Chambers is developed, there could be the storm drain put in, or the drainage facilities put in down to Salt Creek. And with that additional development, there's more justification to put drainage facilities going down to Salt Creek. Right now, it just drains across land. And so the speculation is yes, there's development coming in. My recommendation is yes, we do have stuff put in place when that development comes through.
So, this is a rhetorical question, but are we making a bad situation worse?
No.
By not making any changes to this?
Sorry.
And it's okay. We are being asked to vote on this and change the plan that was voted on in 2017. So what happened between 2017 to now to justify such a drastic change? And I say drastic because we are asking to approve this modification, yet there is no water flow map even being presented. So I need to know that. When it rains now, I no longer relax because I, in my neighborhood, live in an area that has resulted in bad planning. So I have had 4 feet of water in my basement. I have had living rooms of my neighbors filled up many feet because faulty storm drains on both sides of me. And so I look at the staff report that says this will necessitate the city's participation in the construction of regional storm drain facilities. And are we not doing our job here? Are we trying to get out of paying for something? Because the devastation on every single family, one of them had a bedbound child on oxygen and other medical equipment, and she had to be rescued out of her home in the middle of the night because of bad planning. So I need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is not going to happen to this neighborhood. And I don't know how somebody could sell a home to someone and we change the plans to get a cheaper cost, whatever that may be. That affects people's lives. As far as I'm concerned, the city should have been held responsible for what happened to my neighbors. And they had to take it all out of their own pocket. So if we're setting up other families for failure, that would be very shameful on our part. So maybe you can address some of those things.
Sure. So all we're really trying to do is look at the correlation between these 4 tracks or the one particular track and how that's affecting the existing drainage and the proposed drainage. The existing drainage is really what is of concern. The existing drainage from the yellow and the blue area is what the problem is. It's not related at all to this development. So we could still have this development, put the storm drain in, but we still have a large share to contribute. Because if you can relate to how big that yellow and blue area is compared to the 9-2 map, because the 9-2 map was the only one that was in the conditions that said that it would drain to the Chambers Street in the storm drain line. I can't figure out where that magic number of a 60-inch storm drain line came from. That storm drain line, somebody had requested, and when I'm saying it's my predecessors, they had requested the idea of looking at putting in a drainage line in there, but that drainage line really only serves the existing runoff. So to answer the question that, are we doing our job right? That wasn't your question, but it's close. I tried. We're taking this part and we're not making things worse. Because we're not picking up that runoff from the existing runoff and we're not putting it into the basin, which just will overflow at that point. But we still have the option, if that is the request, that storm drain line could still be put in at this time with this development. It's just a matter of how much we contribute at this point. We know the percentage of what, based on this particular map, is in relationship to the yellow and blue area. We know what that percentage is, and we know what the cost would be approximately. So it's just a matter of if that's the choice of the council.
Can you show us the flow of water? Because we're making a decision here without any scientific facts.
The flow of water, I don't have a plan, but I know what's happening there. So the flow of water, there it is. So right now, the reason why I have a blue area here is because that blue area drains to essentially right here and goes over to Lion and down. That's existing, so ignore the red for the time being. If you look at the yellow area, the reason why that's a different shape is because all of that drains to right over here. The way it's currently conditioned, this map, for 9-2, is that it's currently conditioned that down in this corner is where the water would drain out and then connect and mix with the flow from all up in here and then drain over to this basin. What is being suggested is that this development, as is the rest of the developments, do not drain out here, but they drain and they maintain within the existing or the proposed development. So the runoff that we are experiencing, all of this in the yellow, will still go here.
So the blue square drains to the bottom left into one of the developments that we're talking about.
No, it drains to
The street?
Thornton and comes out over here to Lion and goes south because the water doesn't go into that basin.
So the question is, the amount of water, I mean, you guys do this, the amount of water that comes out, I mean, the amount of water that flows down my street got so high that it got up this high on the bricks of the folks' house. So how do I know that that's not going to happen? Because these meetings, I mean, these are public meetings. They're going to come back to us when something fails, and we need to be able to justify why we decided to waive this. I need you to convince me why.
I don't look at it as waiving it. By modifying this, all we're doing is the runoff that's here is not going to get over here. That's the only thing that changes. By modifying the recommended modification, by having this site drain to itself, means that this water that comes from up in here will still drain to the south side of the street and then continue on south.
Okay, so I understand. If you're having 36892 is going to contain its own water. Okay, but it's also going to have to contain the water that's coming down from the blue area because that's the natural flow. And you're saying it's going to all stay on the street, it's not going to come down into the...
That's correct. Yeah. It won't, it is not, the blue area is not designed to drain into here. It's designed to drain to the street and out this way. And, well, it doesn't go this way because the drainage flows this way. The cross gutters are going across the street. So the water in here does not mix into this development.
So then, what is the difference, what has changed between 17 and now that it would cause this? You're saying that,
I don't think anything has changed.
well, you're asking for a change.
Yes, you're right. I am asking for a change to help promote further development in this area. What has changed is the fact that the conditions, the way they were written, do not dictate exactly what the percentage is of what the city's contribution is. Now, after going through this calculation of looking at how large of an area this yellow and then blue area is, in comparison to this, the percentage that the city would technically be liable for to contribute to is about 91% of what the construction of that drainage line is. Because I haven't been able to see within these conditions to prove that it says, developer, thou shalt install that drainage line. I'm not advocating for the elimination of any drainage facilities. I'm advocating just to have this development go through and modify the conditions. We will have to put some sort of drainage facilities in the future. But if we put it in from here to here, what we're doing right now is then just pushing the problem from here to here. So this developer, for these 4 tracks, even if we force the issue of having them install this line here, all the water would end up here and still go down this way, or whatever it does over here now. We don't solve the ultimate problem. What we need to do is take our drainage diff fees, our fund, and look at that as well as working with flood control to solve it more regionally as opposed to just locally.
A little bit, or maybe you guys can explain it.
I think Linda has another question.
I do have another question. We're in almost the middle of the red rectangle, right in there. You said the water flows that direction. Is that a natural flow of water that would come through, or is that man-made that goes over to Lyon?
It's man-made in the sense that this blue area drained to this position right here because there was a street, or not was, there is a street. And sorry, I can never be a surgeon. That's why this thing shakes a lot. I apologize for that.
So that is current, that is a man-made channel, so to speak, as a street, and that will remain to take water from that area over to Lyon to flow down.
That's correct.
Okay. Oh, that was my only question.
So just to be clear, when they go in to develop those 4 tracks, that there's not going to be any additional water drainage, because now when it rains on those, it's all raw land, so the water's just going to percolate through the dirt. And then once it gets all paved, all the water is going to stay within, and there's not going to be additional. It's not going to make Chamber Street become more of a river than a creek when it rains.
No, it's going to be water out there.
But it's going to be contained within the.
From the new development,
It's not going to be additional water, is what I'm getting at.
No, because the water is to be retained on site per the drainage manual.
So there's not going to be any additional water.
You're absolutely right, but I answered the question. I could, though. I can't predict the future of more than a 100-year storm. I wish I could say that there's nothing more than a 100-year storm, but I think everybody in this valley knows that there's more than a 100-year storm. It happens.
My basement has flooded 4 times since I've lived there in 19 years. So that kind of rain happens here. Mm-hmm. So not being predicting, but history shows that we get lots of water. And so that's what I'm saying. I don't want to be, just like Mike said, we don't need a Seattle Basin instant replay.
No, you're absolutely right.
And I feel like we're setting ourselves up for that. I'm not convinced. You haven't convinced me. You got to give me some real hard facts.
So if I could add to that, Steve and I had a number of conversations related to this because I had the same exact questions you did. And so what it boiled down to is that assuming that the condition gets left as it is, as Steve mentioned, that doesn't solve the issues that are going on there. It essentially just pushes it down the way. And so what Steve is talking about is really that longer-term solution that needs to involve flood control to deal with the runoff from the yellow and the blue area. Is that correct, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's even if the condition was left as it is, that doesn't address the issue. It just moves it from one location to the other. And so that's why the conversation is really twofold. One, trying to be proactive with development in the city, but then also two, being mindful and understanding of the fact that even the way that the condition is written as it is, that doesn't solve the issues that are there, even without this development.
It still doesn't fix the problem. We're just dancing around the problem. And so I just don't want to create more problems, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and either way, whether it's with the council choosing not to make this change and stating, no, we would like it to remain the same, there is no guarantee. There is no guarantee that anything improves there. It just moves it down the street, down Chambers.
So if we did not make a change, what would this look like?
If we not make a change and we
Why don't you just show the comparison?
Sure.
Because I understand what he's saying. I mean, I understand what both of you are saying. We have a water problem over here.
Yes. Yes, so if we don't make any changes to the conditions, right now it says there should be some sort of drainage facility considered to be installed out there. And somehow in the conditions it talks about a 60-inch drain line. I don't even know if that would work. But if we don't change the conditions that we have right now, we would work then with the developer and have a storm drain line installed from right about here, take it all the way over to here, drain into this basin. The basin would have to be modified to be deepened out a little bit because the drain line right now is lower than the bottom of the basin. So there'd be some work there. So all that could be still installed if we don't change the conditions. There's no issue there.
So, and then the reason they want a 60-inch is because then they are going to be putting in a storm line that's going to take care of the whole yellow area.
Yeah, yeah,
That's why it would be so large.
yeah. And I'm not even certain if that would be large enough based on the flows that we could get through there.
I can tell you for certainty that that basin's not big enough to handle, because I've seen that basin overflow. And it just overflows into Lyon.
So even if you wanted to still keep it the way it is, and it's a perfectly good observation, it doesn't change where the water goes. If somehow this development, which there would be a difficult time to have a nexus to it, if this development somehow had been required to install a drainage line down to here, that should make the problem go away. But that can't happen unless you force the developer to install that down to here, and you would never get a developer or home builder to build that. They'd have to look at buying all of this land and trying to put it all together. So all we're really doing is just changing it from here, draining along the south side of the street, or if we keep it the way it is, putting in a drain line, putting it to right here, and then continuing on south.
My other question on 36892, if that drainage basin overflows, that would also overflow onto Chambers?
Yes, it would.
Not necessarily into housing?
Correct. It would go onto Chambers because the basin right now, they would be losing a couple lots right around in this area, well, throughout the whole development, but right now the basin is at the lower right-hand corner. Yeah, so they have to enlarge that basin, and right over here, these homes here, so there's, on the other side of the wall of those homes, there is homes all the way up here, and then there's a street that comes out here. There'll be a basin on either side of this street that would overflow to the south.
Okay. you said a basin on either side, so that bottom corner, right next to the left of lot 48, that would be one of the basins, the catch basin?
Yes, retention basin. Yeah, you do have a copy of the map in your, yes, perfect. So, in this orientation, you can see that the bottom there, they do have to modify this because they would be losing a couple lots, as I mentioned, in order to accommodate maintaining that flow on site as opposed to running it off site. And one thing I also want to point out that I did mention in the staff report too, the developer still has to prove it'll work. And what I mean by prove it will work, the condition is written on number 39 within the report, about halfway through. It says, this approval is subject to D.R. Horton's modification to the on-site basin located within tract map 9-2 to retain 100% of the tract's on-site stormwater runoff for the City of Hemet's drainage design manual. So my point on this is that if for some reason it goes back where I don't know the history that the designers know, that if the soil has an issue or something of that sort and they can't get it to work, then we have to go back to the original condition, and we still have to put, the city still contributes a portion of it to the construction of the storm drain line.
That's why in the staff report, under the analysis section, it says they're potentially giving up some lots, several lots.
Yes.
Potentially lose several lots. It's not for sure yet because they are still, that was another one of my questions. It's potential because it's not been proven yet.
Yes.
I've got a question, and I think maybe the applicant who's on the line might be able to answer this, but as far as the calculation on retaining the water from the developed lots, is it calculated based on the asphalted streets, or is it based on the total lot? Because when you build homes and people put rain gutters on their homes and then they have them go into drains that are cored into the curb, and they end up on, all that water will end up on the street. So is it included, are they just calculating the asphalt and the concrete area where there's going to be runoff, or is it calculate what's each individual home site in each individual lot to be able to drain that water off?
So there is a percentage based on hydrology calculations, and I am not a hydrologist, so I'm not going to blow smoke. But based on the hydrology calculations, when you include those areas, the housing, it's determined based on the percentage of land cover. So if we had 4 maps and we had four homes in that whole area, it would be a different hydrology calculation, somewhat different than if we have 300 homes in that area. That's what ends up happening. So the calculations that are done are based on the number of homes within that development. That's what the design manual requires.
All right, very good, thank you.
More questions? Let's see if I can kind of sum this up. Essentially, we are acknowledging that we have a drainage problem from an existing development, and we have a proposed development that wants to go in and develop vacant lots, and their contribution to not exacerbating an existing issue is they're saying we will do mitigation by putting detention basins in our development that will capture and retain any runoff water from their development. That's kind of the summation of what's facing us. And you mentioned in your presentation that there's work still to be done working with county flood control to try to deal with the bigger issue and rerouting and controlling the runoff from the existing development down to Salt Creek. Is that correct?
Yes.
So essentially what you're saying is we have a potential for a development that is basically saying we'll take care of any runoff on our development and not contribute to what's already an existing issue.
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks for explaining all that.
I hope it was factual and not biased in any way. Look, I try. My wife just puts up a sign every day and says, yeah, okay, fine.
Speak English, not engineer. Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the effort that's been put into this, because I want to see this property's been vacant for a long, long, long time. And I know that the property owner has been working with Blaine Warmer to get this up and running and get something in there developed, and I want to see it developed. So I want to thank you for all the work that's been put into this, and for D.R. Horton for stepping up to ultimately get in here and develop this and build some more homes in here. So thanks for that. And it's still going to be an ongoing water issue. I mean, we have drainage issues in Hemet. I mean, up until just recently when they finally did some flood control on Whittier, they used to set a little bridge out in front of the school so the kids could cross and not have to walk through 4 feet of water on the curb. So it's good to see that this is going to make some progress. Like Russ said, we know we've got the water and drainage issues that have to be dealt with. Metropolitan, since they own that, they are a water district, and we have water issues. Maybe they can deal with the water. Well, they can capture the water and utilize it.
Well, it's a tap.
All right, thanks. Okay, if there are no more questions of staff, thank you, Steve, for your staff report and the work you put into this. So with that, I will open the public hearing on this item. Deputy Clerk, are there any requests to speak on this item?
No, Mayor.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have not received any requests to speak, but we do have the applicant on the line.
We do have the applicant on the line, and you have the floor, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor and members of City Council, I'm Daniel Boyd, and I'm Vice President for D.R. Horton. I first want to acknowledge and our sincere appreciation to staff up and down the aisles for working on this issue for several months. To put some things into perspective based on the questions raised by Council, I'd like to spend a minute or two to do some clarification. When we entered into the feasibility of these projects, all four, our business plan is to acquire all four, process the plans, and proceed with immediate development. In our feasibility analysis, we early recognized the condition of approval. And trust me, D.R. Horton is not here this evening to walk away from something. We're here this evening to say this isn't our water. So we started examining this with Steve and the engineers, Blaine Warmer namely, and we came to the scientific, or I should say the engineering conclusion based on the hydrology reports that were approved that the 60-inch storm drain line and chambers did not have a nexus to the tract in question. Rather, the tract in question, presently designed, would contribute about 9%. So we started looking at this and saying, well, wait a minute, this is water that's being caused by the existing upstream developments and causing the majority of this water going into chambers. So having said that, we worked with staff and we came to the determination, both sides of the aisle, that Tract 9-2 had very little contribution to this future storm drain that was envisioned many years ago. However, what failed in the process was, and again, I support Steve in his honesty, there was no logic reason back when this project was approved that established 100% or even 50% or even under 10% responsibility of this tract to move forward with that storm drain. So basically, what we are doing is we've made the decision, and to answer one of the many questions, we will definitely be losing at least 2 residential lots, maybe 3. And what we're going to do is take care of that 9% contribution on site, as with the other 3 tracts. The second question that we came up with in feasibility, well, why wasn't that basin designed to do like the other 3? Well, no one had an answer, but the bottom line is in order for this project to move forward and the feasibility of this, we made the assertion and we approached Steve Lorizzo and we approached the city manager and others involved in the process that really this one track is being burdened with a phenomenal storm drain facility of which we have very little contribution. So we made the decision, if we're able to engineer, as Steve confirmed this evening, to the satisfaction of the city engineer, we then will have no contribution to that water. And truly, the 60-inch storm drain really needs to be viewed as a regional improvement. It really needs to be a city improvement for the installation. And unfortunately, the existing developments that have been there for many years really did not do anyone justice this evening, because they basically are contributing a great deal of water, and obviously we know what happens next in Chambers. So when we looked at the conditions, the condition basically provided for a relook, a basically revisiting this situation. So what Steve is advocating and proposing on behalf of the development is that additional details of the proposed 60-inch storm drain on Chambers would have to be demonstrated before any permits would be issued. So really, the condition in itself was written years ago to allow for a second look. But it's that second look that D.R. Horton has done along with city staff. So what I'm hoping is that we can agree to the modification that will allow the feasibility of this project, all projects, to move forward. And we're not escaping our duty and obligation under the design manual, the drainage manual, to take care of our water. This is our water that are hitting the tracks, and it's our water that we're obligated to take care of. The track is not obligated to take care of regional water that's not tributary to our project. And that's where we developed a initial thought, well, why don't we split the cost, so to speak? Well, it really wasn't that easy. We had to determine the percentage of tributary that the project generated, approximately 9.8%, and the balance really is a regional contribution. So we started thinking, well, wait a minute, that's a lot of money for the city to put up right now on a situation where other developments will be coming into play that will have a contribution, and this track 9.2 is proven beyond a reasonable doubt based on the hydrology reports of the 9.8%. So then, and lastly, we all start scratching our heads, and frankly, we were all sitting in a meeting going, well, why on earth is this project, this one project, being burdened? So we decided that this, by modifying our project track, we could take care of 100% of our water, and that's what's before you this evening.
Well, thank you very much for those comments. Since we have you on the line, Council, have any questions of the applicant? Carly?
All right, Mr. Boyd, this may be very, very premature, but if you plan on developing all four of those, and this is the bottom lot, do you have plans for mitigating the water for the rest of those other lots?
Oh, absolutely. Each of the four, and Steve can back me up on this, but for the fact of 9.2, which we're proposing to modify the existing design to accommodate 100%, all the other tracks have their own basins, and they all are taking care of their own water. It was just this bottom basin that basically wasn't, effectively, if you will, sized quite large enough to handle all the water. So the engineering decisions of a decade or longer ago basically said, well, okay, well, that will just overflow into Chambers and so on and so forth, and we'll just go ahead and put a 60-inch storm drain and tack it onto this track. Well, there was no nexus to that decision then, and there's no nexus to it today. So no, to answer your direct question, all four tracks will be developed in accordance with the approved hydrology manual, and so therefore we're taking care of our water, and we're not going to be contributing to the drainage and the flooding that's occurring in Chambers Avenue. And again, Steve Lorenzo is going to have the ability to proofread and plan check those plans. So this, if it's modified this evening, still has to go through plan check to prove out our contention, and we fully anticipate that will be the case.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you for that, that overview and verbal commitment at this point. So, yes. So we have no other speakers that want to speak in favor or opposition?
Correct, Mayor. There are no other requests to speak.
Okay. Hearing none, then I will close the public hearing. And are there any further comments from council? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the request for the modification for that.
I have a motion to approve the staff recommendation. And we have a second. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve, for your presentation and your work, and we'll look forward to the next phase of this. Next on our item is item 12. We have presentation. And we have some folks here that we would like to acknowledge. So do you want to bring them in? And can I have council join me up front for this presentation? Thank you very much. Okay, well, tonight we have the honor, based on a recommendation that came from Ms. Shirley Maddox. The City Council is recognizing a group of gentlemen who went above and beyond in their service to our community. Jim Mays has been providing trucking in the city for over 8 years through his company, Allied Erosion. He takes pride in his business and our city and is an active member of our community. Mr. Mays decided to donate trucks and employees to service the Hemet community and to do some trash pickup and beautification around the city. Ms. Shirley Maddox brought this to our attention, and because of her, we've invited the gentlemen who were part of this project to come here and be recognized. So for showing your sincere care for our community through your generous contribution of time and resources, we recognize Mr. Jim Mays, who donated the trucks and paid staff time, Mr. David Hume, who coordinated the cleanup, and the worker bees, Stephen Mays, Kenneth Shellhorn, and Patrick Eggering, all who hit the streets and picked up trash and debris. So thank you all for your exemplifying community spirit, pride, and teamwork on this project. So we have some certificates of appreciation. So I have Patrick Eggering. Thank you. And Dave Hume. And Stephen Mays. Stephen? Well done. Thank you.
And here, I'll go ahead and
Okay. Would you like to make any comments?
truthfully, you know what? It was our honor to serve our city. We've been in the city for all our lives. And I said this a long time ago. We are Hemet strong.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we had some photographs that showed the evidence of their fine work. So thank you, gentlemen. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 13, our receive and file. We have 13A, the warrant registers, and 13B, the investment portfolio as of June 2020. May I have a motion to receive and file these items? I have a motion by Carl and a second. Roll call vote for.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 14, our consent calendar. These are items that will be acted upon simultaneously unless a request is made by an individual council member for an item to be considered separately. Are there any members of the council that would like to pull any consent items for separate consideration?
14E.
E?
E, as in Edward.
Do you want me to list? 14B,
D, B?
B is in boy. F is in Frank. G, H, I, J.
Linda, do you have any? There's still a few left. Okay, then may I have a motion on items 14A, C, D as in David, and K, and L, and M. We have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes. That motion passes unanimously. So, 14B.
City Manager Lopez. This is not a renewal, is that right? But this says that we went out to RFP.
Yeah, I believe we did. Chief Brown, are you here to provide the staff report? Thank you.
I'll just ask my questions. There are no RFPs in here, and so we've made it clear that we want RFPs when we do these things, and certain departments just don't hear us, and so it's frustrating. Those are my questions. It's all about the principle of the matter.
Council, Mayor, members of the council, Scott Brown, your fire chief. Tonight before you is the staff report and recommended action to adopt a resolution awarding CSG Consultants a contract for plan review, inspection, and code services. We worked very closely with our finance team and our purchase and procurement. We did in fact do an RFP, and CSG was the only responsive bidder that provided the input. CSG is the incumbent, has been part of our team since my tenure here. They are an adaptive, demand-driven staffing model, which allows us to adapt, increase staff as needed, and we've been very pleased with their services. Right now, the focus continues to be to address the business community in a timely fashion, especially with the planning and development code and related issues that are important to the emerging building and development going on in our city. So we're at the tail end of that contract, and this is a priority item. We've deferred this 2 months, mainly driven by staff capacity. It's before you tonight, and hopefully you'll consider that as it's been provided to you tonight. With that, I'll be open for questions.
Well, the date on the contract is July 28th, and then on the next page it says the 1st of July. So, and we're getting it September 8th. So if we don't need to vote on it, we don't need to vote on it if we're already doing it. There is some interesting contract
questions in here. We are required to pay them within 45 days, but we have 60 days to essentially reject or accept their work. So if we have any problems, then that's just kind of sloppy contract work, but we have no recourse if we already pay them. That was just beside the fact. But my main question is the RFPs and the date of the contract versus the date of today. Are we already using them?
Yes, they're I use the term incumbent. They've been the incumbent contractor for these services for several years now. And they were the only responsive bidder as part of the RFP process that we coordinated through our finance contract.
This is different than our fire prevention officer now too, right?
It's completely different, yeah.
You can just tell us.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. When we built the new position as a result of the budget restructuring, we created a fire prevention officer position. That position right now, I shared with our city manager that we would need to continue the relationship with CSG. From a technical standpoint, the things that CSG deals with requires a high degree of technical understanding of code, process, planning and development. We have a lot of things that commingle with planning and development, so it's important that they have those skill sets. Our fire prevention officer at this point is very basic. We have them working actually in tandem with our planning and development team right now in developing fire safety programs, and are working very diligently with our Mountain Shadows community, for instance, to address some long-standing backlog of fire safety and code-related issues. So they do go hand in hand, Councilman Meyer. That was by design until we can get that person trained and to receive the technical skill sets that they're going to need. I anticipate that at least the next 2 years as we have evolved the position and provide the additional training necessary to bring them up to speed. So they kind of go side by side.
I don't know if you want to answer this or if the city manager does, but as far as the execution of this contract, I mean, it's not signed, even though it's dated July 1st. I need to understand that in the date of today.
This is, I believe the chief alluded to one of those instances where it was not brought before you prior to the establishment of the work. We do our best to bring those items to you before that ever comes up. And in this instance, instead of pausing all of the work, we continued on with the firm, knowing that we only had one prospective bidder. So that was, I believe, what you have in this scenario.
If I may add just one other comment to your point on the work product and the quality assurance and those types of things are directly overseen by me. We have a direct one-on-one relationship. I meet with them on a weekly basis. They've been very cooperative and adapting to what our needs are, not for instance what the needs are for CSG, because they have other clients that they're doing. We are the priority. So I'll give you a good example. We've shifted from Thursdays to Wednesdays because that was the demand that we're seeing from our business community, and request they want Wednesday, they don't want Thursday. So we have the ability to adapt that schedule, and we've done that. That's in place now, and it's working very well. So, but I do understand and value your point you make. That's why I very, very comfortable with bringing this to you for the reasons that you've underscored. They do quality work and have provided good service within our budget.
Linda, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Actually, to follow up on something that Carly said. So is the inception of the contract date 7/28 or actually 9/8 when it comes up for renewal? Or 7/1? It's multiple choice. A, B, C, or D.
It's dependent upon when the expiration was with CSG. So
that's correct.
Do you know which date that is, Chief?
And I do not, so I'd have to get back to you with that answer.
Okay, if you could just let us know at the next meeting. And then just a comment that my question was also going to be if it was sent out for RFP, where are the rest of them? So maybe just a having that in the staff report, that you sent out X number and this was the only company that...
Absolutely.
So just point
Yeah,
of clarification for our
Good point.
records.
There was one item that we didn't bring forward at the council meeting because of that issue, because the backup wasn't included with the bids and the proposals that council prefers to see. So we specifically took an item off because it didn't have that. This one, obviously, will state in the future whenever we just have one proposal there in the staff
Appreciate that
report.
very
Sure.
much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Michael? So I won't beat you up on what they already did, because I think they touched on some good quality points. I just wanted to say that I've had direct work with this contractor, and they've done, with my personal experience, did a phenomenal job. I would like to see them more than 1 day a week, if, you know, as development, if there's a need, would be nice. But it's nice to see that they were flexible to move the date from Thursdays to Wednesdays. From my personal experience, I mean, I had to scramble a little bit to make sure that I had everything to get them there because they were going on vacation. I didn't want to wait an extra 2 weeks. So, but the work they did, the quality of work that they did was phenomenal. So,
Well, I appreciate hearing that feedback. And that back to that demand scheduling, if we have a need to increase or schedule an additional day, they've been extremely, we have a lot of, I call them no notice, has to happen by a yesterday kind of approach, and I understand that. So we try to be very flexible with that, and they've been very helpful. On one call, they'll make themselves available, you know, on no notice. And we do have an expedite process as well. So occasionally we have those needs that we need to meet, and we can accommodate them. Obviously, we offset that with an increased expedite fee that we have the applicant apply for. But I appreciate that feedback, though, on the contractor. Thank you.
And the only comment I have is not really a question, but I'm just glad to see that we have a quality company that's looking into things proactively. We know with this a community that's the age that ours is, we have a lot of problem locations, and our fire responses are a result of that in many cases. So it's good that as we get new projects coming along that we're being proactive and keeping up so that we can prevent fires instead of respond to them. So.
Thank you.
So if there are no more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on item 14B as in boy.
I'll move approval of 14B.
I have a motion to approve. Second. And a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilor Meyer?
I'm voting no, and for the record, it is based on the principle that we do not follow procedures.
Councilmember Percival?
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes. Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And 14E.
Michael. That's the one I pulled. That's for the skate park. I just wanted to make a comment on the skate park, thank you for getting this on, that we're moving forward on this, that we're looking at grants. And I say that because Bonnie spent a lot of time working on the skate park for the community and how important it was for the community. So I just wanted to acknowledge Bonnie for that, for the work she put into it, and for staff for the work they put into it, and the push for grants to get the skate park going. So with that, I will move that we approve this.
I will second that, but can I make a comment too?
Yes, you
I
may.
have comments too. I didn't attend all of the public meetings on the skate park, but I did attend quite a few, and it was really refreshing and reassuring that the majority of the input on what they did with design and location and this and that and all these terminologies I'd never heard before in my life came from the skateboarders themselves and their parents. And the buy-in from the community was just exceptional. So I would add my thanks to Bonnie and staff for going out, but also just for the number of people from the public, the kids, and it's not all kids. I mean, boarders can be older. and they don't seem to have any problem with it. But it was just amazing because it was their input that really got this whole thing going. So that's it.
Harley?
Let's see here, let me find my notes. Now, this report E, and then the next one is F. They kind of go together, and so my question was, this report talks about a $2 million skate park, and the other one talks about $1 million skate park. So,
Tim, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you provide the staff report on this item and correlate that or tie in item 14F on that as well, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. The application for the state park grant funds, it's fairly consistent with our last application, $1.996 million. So we just decided that it would be best to request $1.95 million. In our conversations with Mr. Russell, which is part of New Line Skate Parks on item 14F, we're actually debating a number of issues, and my discussions with him so far has been, can we phase in the skate park? What could be the initial cost of the skate park? That is in the event we don't get the grant and we have to come up with other sources of funds. And so he has suggested that his initial phase would be in the neighborhood of $800,000 to $1 million, and then of course we'd have to find funds for that. If we're successful in obtaining the $1.95 million grant, we can do the full 15,000 plus skate park and not have to phase in the skate park design or improvements at all.
thank you. The other question I have for you, and maybe this is for you, Chris, but we just cut services and are lessening our watering and taking care of our parks. So you think, okay, so Gibble Park, if we're not going to mow it as much and it's not going to be as nice, but yet we're going to invest $2 million into the backside of it, I just have to be able to justify that.
Yeah, a couple items, particularly with new grant facilities. That's essentially what this is. I am happy to report that Public Works has developed a concept that we don't believe will necessarily result in parks or appearances that are bad on the eye. So we're looking at removing some turf and doing some other turf modifications so that we don't have parks looking in a manner that we don't want them to. So this is for a new facility. It's difficult to receive grants that cover operations and maintenance for facilities. So that's the only different
Right, and I get all that. I just want us to make sure that if we're going to invest $2 million, then we want to make sure that the entire park is looking nice, not just the new part. But if you have a plan, then that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah, and that was the comment about doing things differently instead of not watering a facility. Let's look at opportunities to remove some of the landscaping that needs a lot of water and replacing that with more drought tolerant or other types of materials that don't require a lot of water.
Thank you.
And I would think that whatever footprint the ultimate skate park project takes, that's not going to require irrigation, and so that would allow for some water that was currently being used for irrigation to go elsewhere without having to increase something. So I just want to echo the comments by my colleagues, thanking Bonnie for her work going into this and getting it to the point where it is. I know it's a long, long process. The city that I moved from went through a very similar process and ended up with a very well-used and appreciated skate park, and primarily because of the process, where the skaters themselves, the end users, had buy-in because they were involved from the very infancy of the project. So I think that has a lot to do with how well the ultimate facility is utilized and taken care of, because they have some ownership in it. So with that, I think we already have a motion by Michael to approve and a second by Linda. So roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer? Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that passes unanimously. Okay, Carly, 14F is in Frank.
So my first question, and this is just typical, but there's no bids in here except for the one.
Tim, can you address the council member's question about the lack of bids here and the background on why we chose to move in this direction, please?
Absolutely. Once again, good evening, council. We requested this proposal from New Line Skate Parks primarily because of Mr. Russell. Canton Russell is the primary designer on this project. Mr. Russell was basically the individual that put together the feasibility analysis and study on behalf of Stantec. He's since moved on to New Line Skate Parks. When we resurrected the thought of moving forward with the skate park concept, we met with the council subcommittee, and the council subcommittee asked us to try to track down Mr. Russell and see if Mr. Russell was interested in moving the skate park to the next phase, and that's why we've actually just pursued Mr. Russell. He has history on the project. It's basically going to be a takeoff of the feasibility analysis that he did, and this will get us the more firmed up analysis of what we'll actually see out there, and we'll get all the way to construction documents, and then he'll even help us with preparing bid documents and even working with whatever contractor selected to build the park. So that is in a nutshell why we basically pursued only the one individual contractor.
So I don't think that any committee or group besides council has the determination to not get bids.
So we were pleased with the work that had been done prior, particularly with the group of engaging the community, the feedback, the way that they were able to digest the information that had been gathered from the public. And we thought that this would be a good opportunity for us to continue that momentum. And that's really one of the prime drivers as to why we continued with this. Tim, did you want to add anything else to that as well?
No. Thank you.
I mean, that's what a good salesperson does. And so, of course that's going to happen. But as a public entity spending public funds, we have a responsibility to get bids. I mean, it's just the same as with the fire chief. It's the same thing. It's the principle. Besides that, this bid in here says the only documentation of fees in here has $92,500, and so then our staff report says something different than was submitted to us. It is notable, and I think that we're following Mr. Russell from one business to another. For whatever reason, he changed his business. He switched employers, but it's all the more reason that we should be getting 3 bids. This isn't our money.
So if the council, based on some of the feedback that we received from council in previous meetings, they had recommended that we move forward as fast as possible. We can certainly put together an RFP for these services and bring that back to the council if the council prefers that versus going with what is before the council today. So it's really up to the council to decide if there is a preference there.
I have to have some sort of certainty that I do not have to be in your office or in every single one of their offices or in staff's office because I'm going to know that we are following the rules. And if we all have the same rules and if we've always said we would like to have bids, but we don't get them when we don't want to, then that just, that creates a micromanaging environment on our end because we are making sure that you're following the rules. I just need to know, are we going to get 3 bids or not? Are we going to get bids or no? It's just a simple question. If we're not going to do it, if we're going to pick and choose, I just need to know that.
And the city attorney can chime in on this specifically, but essentially the guidelines that set forth when we go out to bid and when we do not are specified within the municipal code. So certainly if the council preferred to change when it comes to these types of design types of services and requiring that city staff go out to bid, that would be the appropriate place to make that change by way of the municipal code and the policies written within.
But when we talk about investments and all those things, and I bring forward people that are interested in helping us, it can't be heard because you're just one council member, Carly. So I don't know how the rules don't apply across the board. We get bids on things. We've made it clear as a council, actually.
I don't know what you're referencing when it comes down to groups that you bring forward. I'm not familiar with that, so I'm unaware of that. If the council would like us to go out to RFP for this design service, we're certainly able to do that. It would add some time elements to that, but again, we are completely open to what the council prefers.
Tom, did you care to comment on anything that the city manager mentioned?
Well, the municipal code will set forth the parameters for professional services agreements and when those go out to an RFP, usually set by the amount of the professional services agreement, which is distinguished from a public works construction contract. So this is not a public works construction contract. This is just a professional services agreement. So there would be a certain threshold amount that would require or provide some guidance to city staff on when an RFP would need to be sent out and proposals would need to be submitted.
And Mr. City Manager, can you let us know if this particular professional services project is above or below that threshold?
So as Tom alluded to, it is a design service contract. So theoretically, there is no requirement for this specific instance. The question that Councilmember Meyer had about 2 different fees, the optional services is really what brings the total up to $92,500. Those are as needed, and as stated in the proposal, we've made a determination that those items are not needed for our instance, but they did include those in the proposal as items that they could have included. We've decided that we don't need that work from them. So that's why there is a difference between the proposal and what is before you today. Essentially, had this been below a $50,000 threshold, I could have signed this, but because of the cost exceeds my signing authority, that is why it is before the council tonight.
And a perfect example of what I'm talking about is when I asked to bring a water professional in for free, and that still didn't even qualify for anyone's time. That's what I'm talking about. Different rules.
Do you have any comments, questions? Linda? So what's the council's preference on this? We have before us a staff report and a staff recommendation, and we've had some discussion about bringing it back with additional bids. So what's your council's preference?
What's your take?
I've only met with this individual at one meeting, and I thought he did a fairly good job. His pricing is reasonable. It's I know he did some work that he didn't charge for or didn't bill for, so I know he's working with the city to get this project. He wants to see this project done. I think just as much as the kids do that went to the project, or that went to all the meetings. I think that Carly's got a valid point. Is that when the rules are in place, they should be followed across the board all the time. So it's if you want to make the motion for this to go to a bid, I would be supportive of that. On the same token, I'd like to see this project move forward quicker than late.
I would have just thought that it was part of the natural process. Those are my expectations. I mean, I thought tonight I was looking for bids because we've always been clear about wanting bids because it's not our money. The other question I have is the funding is set out of account 361-7150-2710. I don't think we can be more transparent than that.
So Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Parks Diff?
Yes, that's the Park Diff Fund.
Comment basically to what Michael said. If we don't have a design, how can we go for bid? How can you say to a designer, we would like you to design a skate park if we don't know what we want? This guy knows what we want, correct? Or is he
He's brought
this far?
He's brought designs to the ad hoc committee and to the public, that the public had a lot of input on what features and that were there. So all that was put into that design that he brought.
The study that we paid for. It was a feasibility study?
Yeah, the money that was
right.
previously.
So that's how any developer would come in and know how to bid, because they would look at the feasibility study and what the city wanted. He's going to use the same information.
I wanted to add one thing. The notion that staff isn't following the municipal code with respect to professional services is not accurate.
I beg to differ because we just had 15B, which was the same problem. It was a different item.
When it comes to professional services, if the council chooses to change that up to state that every single time we were looking at professional services, everything under the book or under the sun, then essentially that's, we could certainly change that up. I can state that when it comes to certain instances, it does create bottlenecks. Maybe not in this particular instance, but in other instances, it does create issues for us. If there is a desire to do that for every single professional services contract, we can certainly do that, but we are following the municipal code when it comes to when we go out to RFP and when we go out to bid.
I'll say this. I'll move to approve this item based on the fact that this has been a heavily community-driven project that needs to get done for the sake of the kids that live in our community.
And I will second that.
Okay, I have a motion to approve and a second on item 14F as in Frank.
Councilmember Meyer?
I vote no for the mere fact that we cannot follow principle, that we hold everyone else to the same standard, and it's not being followed. And then we wait until the very last minute and say that we are going to do this because we need to get it done. We've been talking about the skate park for how many years? The bid should have been out. And it's not our money, it's the people's.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, the motion passes 3-1. Item 14G, resolution declaring city-owned property as surplus land in conformance with the Surplus Land Act, California Government Code Section 54-220. That's that order. Carly?
You can just make a motion, I'm just going to vote no, because I don't agree with all this. Since it was pulled.
Sure.
Okay. On this declaration, and I realize we have to do this at this point because of the state of California mandating that these are things, shenanigans, and hoops we all have to jump through on the local level. Does placing this out with this resolution mandate or stipulate that any of these parcels have to be sold to another person, or that sometime in the near future or in the distant future, if they do not sell, if they can then be used by the city for some project that the city might have?
That's a really good question. Tom, do you have any insight on
And that's
that one?
probably a legal answer, because the state is doing it to us again.
Sure. So you could look at this as step one in what could be a multi-step process. This resolution declares these properties that are on the spreadsheet on the exhibit as surplus. The next step, should the city decide to move forward with either one of those properties or all of those properties or even a small group of those properties, under the Surplus Lands Act would be to send what's called a notice of availability to, it's a list of other public agencies that notice has to go to: school districts, water districts, the state. And then there is a specific time period where those receiving that notice would then contact the city if they were interested in entering into negotiations to purchase that property, which is the step three. If one of those agencies or entities were to contact the city would have a time period to enter into good faith negotiations with that agency. Let me back up, and at the notice of availability phase, if there are no responses after the time period is up, then the city can sell the land to whoever it wants.
Thank you.
And my question was kind of along those same lines. At what point does that 90-day time clock begin? Does it begin with the passage of the resolution on those parcels, or does it begin when the notices go out?
When the notice goes out.
And this is mandated by the state that we approve this. So our sitting up here as council members, our vote really doesn't matter because it has to be done. Is that correct?
If you want to enter into some kind of disposition with this land, if you want to do something with the land, yes, it has to be done. These are the steps.
And we can't just keep it as surplus land or for future projects.
So the ultimate consequences is if we don't do anything on this, then we still own the property, fee simple,
but we can't do anything with it.
So it'll sit vacant forever.
Unless
this law gets rescinded.
Unless you wanted to do some kind of a public project on those properties.
Rock and hard place.
I will move approval of item 14G.
I have a motion to approve by Linda. Do I have a second? I'll second the motion. A roll call vote?
Councilmember Meyer?
No.
Councilmember Percival?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes. So we have a 2-2 vote, so the motion fails.
Motion fails.
Moving on to item 14H. Resolution clarifying the apportionment of the existing park and recreation development impact fee between park improvement and parkland acquisition. for residential development. Already you pulled that one.
Okay, I pulled this one. It seems to me in the staff report and the documentation that we have, it is clear, as stated in the analysis, that the percentage is just distributed 38% and 62%, 2%, according to the Quimby Act. And so we are passing a resolution to clarify what's already clear, and so I'm not understanding why we're doing this.
HP, can you provide the staff report and the background on why we're bringing this forward to council, please?
And the other thing I'd like you to address is 14 years later, why now?
Sure.
Thank you.
So what we have before you is just a clarification of the apportionment of the existing park and recreation fee. As you stated in the analysis, it does talk about the percentage, but that's due to our calculations after we've been going through it. The initial adoption was just a total amount, which was $17.36. And within that total amount, there was two parts, the improvement portion and the acquisition of new land portion. So this was brought to you to kind of figure out what the actual percentage would be based on the improvement portion and the acquisition portion. And this is because when we have a developer who would like to dedicate parkland, then we have to calculate only the acquisition portion, not the improvement portion. That's why we need to clarify the percentage.
So in your analysis, isn't the percentage clear?
Right, that's due to after we did the calculation.
So that is not any, that's not what is existing right now.
No, we did not know what the percentage was. It was just adopted as a total fee of $17.36 as a parking and rec. But of that, we didn't know what portion went to the improvement portion and what portion went to the acquisition portion. So after doing the calculation, we came up with that percentage.
Thank you. I appreciate that because
No
this
problem.
usually has, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And then the reason why...
It's like we already had this amount.
Oh, sorry. And the reason why we didn't have this question in the past 10, 15 years was because we didn't have as many development that came through as a home development. So no one really opted or offered to do a parkland dedication. They just paid the fees. Now we have more developers coming through the line, so there may be some opportunity for them to provide that parkland rather than pay the fees. So we have to clarify what the percentage is.
And it seems like parks are more popular now in developments than
Correct.
it used to be.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Linda, any questions?
Yep.
Michael? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item 14H.
To approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Furstenwalder?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, motion passes unanimously. Item 14I, a resolution approving replacement subdivision improvement agreements and bonds for tract map numbers 25618-1, 31620, and 31620-1, located at the northeast corner of Florida Avenue and Lake Street.
I just have a quick question on this. Did it go back to Planning Commission? This is like final tract approval? I just wanted to make sure. I didn't find it in the minutes of the Planning Commission, so.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council again. This did not go back to Planning Commission because it's just a substitution of the subdivision improvement agreement, which basically is putting the emphasis on the new developer to build the homes. The old developer has sold the property to the new developer. Those agreements are gone. These new agreements come in. It's just a changing out of the bonds and the agreement.
So my only question is since the Planning Commission has been following this to the detail and we have not, then do we have the authority to make these approvals? Are we skipping a process here?
These agreements were done after the Planning Commission saw this, and they were agreements between the parties.
Yeah, so Steve, maybe you can comment on why we're doing this, the background on it, and then why we needed to bring this forward to council, so beginning to end.
Yes. So back when those 3 tracks were originally developed and approved, or not developed, but when they were originally approved, the maps were approved and then subdivision improvement agreements are attached to it along with bonds, just ensuring that the developer will still have to go through and do the public improvements, and if they don't, we have the bonds that can go after them with it. So over time, the original developer didn't finish all the lots. He did finish, or they did finish the majority of the improvements. They had a bond, they still have a bond in place, as well as a subdivision improvement agreement. However, now that they are no longer going to be doing the work or building the homes, the new builder comes in, replaces that document, and it's just to show that that original developer who is no longer tied to the property because he sold it off, the new developer still has to make sure that those improvements are going to be done. So all it is just basically substituting out, if you're buying and selling property, it's like an insurance premium. Not a premium, but an insurance policy, I should say.
So we're just swapping names. Everything else is staying the same.
Yes. There's no change in what they have to do. Trust me, maybe I should have made it more clear. If that was the case, I wouldn't be standing here on a consent calendar item, because I know the history of this particular project. This is really just a swapping of the security, the bonds. And so you know too, it is typical on maps when the original developers have their maps approved, they'll have the subdivision improvement agreement bonds, and then when the home builder comes in, they'll swap it out.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions on 14I? I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 14I. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer? Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Item 14J, a resolution approving a supplemental appropriation and payment to Eastern Municipal Water District for the supplies and installation of 2 water interties.
Tim, can you go ahead and give that staff report, please? Come in, Tim. Okay. Tim isn't here?
I'll just ask. We got your clarification already. I was questioning the dates and the invoice date and then all of this. So the invoice, when I look at this invoice, it just seems so vague. Where were these? This has located at the southeast corner of Stetson Avenue and 7 Hills Drive. 7 Hills Drive. This is on page 7 of 8 of this report. 671 altogether. And then it says that we're subject to a 1.5% month late charge. The date on the bottom says 5/20/19. The date at the top has August 10. And then the next page has project costs. So I thought there were 2 places, right, that we did this?
Correct.
What was the other place? Look, this one only has 1. It says multiple intertie connections, but it only says 1. So are we only paying for 1 right now?
No, it should be both of them.
Actually, 2. I'm just saying the invoice says that. Did you find that page? 671?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So we had, just by way of background, in 2019 we had significant shortages of water to the point where we only had 1 well that was operational, which was placing our ability to provide water to the community significantly at risk. Our ability to just provide that basic commodity was in extreme jeopardy. And so given the emergency of what we had reached out to Eastern Municipal Water District as well as Lake Hemet Water District. and other groups to determine whether this was something that could be done immediately. And the only group agency that had the capacity to do that was Eastern Municipal Water District, and so they did come in and they assisted us. Part of the conversations we had in closed session discussed how we would, it wasn't directly tied to this specific item, but there were other conversations that were going on. And so based on those conversations, it was determined that since we were moving forward on some other opportunities, that this invoice would come due. And so that's really what this item is now. And so there are no late payments. There isn't anything associated with that going back from May. This is simply the cost that we had back in 2019, and we are simply just closing this project out and paying for this invoice in lieu of continuing some of the other conversations we were having.
Like the rental fee is $11,000. Did they have to rent equipment?
Yeah, and we actually had extensive conversations with the existing staff. So we had all the line items that were then provided to staff, and then the staff, because there was some changeover from then to now, we went through methodically every single item that they had included here, and we had additional background and additional detail that was provided to the staff. So we did methodically go through all of those items and confirm that that is the work that was done. This will close out the project. There is nothing else associated with this. The wells, the equipment that were installed there are permanent, so there is nothing else that we would essentially be on the hook for from EMWD. They did the work. This is just paying the work, closing it out, and calling it
I'm just surprised that they would, I almost feel like it's inconsiderate because our budget year closed, so now we're going to have expenses in this year for last year. And
So they had actually reached out to us probably about 6 months ago, and we had gotten this invoice, and I had reached out to EMWT to determine whether it was something that they wanted paid immediately, and they had stated because of the conversations that we were having were still ongoing, that wasn't necessary at that time. But since those conversations, or since those 5 or 6 months ago, we have had some different conversations, and so that's essentially why we're recommending that this get closed out at this point.
I would just recommend that you guys make sure you note on the invoice when you pay it, because it does say, it says multiple intertie connections, but it only gives one location. So just make sure that in our documentation that we're paying for both.
Will do.
Any other questions, staff? I'll entertain a motion then on item 14J.
I'll move approval of 14J.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve 14J. Call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. That concludes everything on the consent calendar. Item 15, discussion and action items. We have 15A, a resolution accepting a grant from California State Library for Biblioteca, Open Access Plus, and establishing a CCTV recording policy. And we have Kathy. Nice to see you.
It's good to be here. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to come and bring this to you. Back in May, I applied for a grant through the state library for open access, which the goal is to, while the library is closed, be able to give patrons who have signed consent and waivers holding harmless, be able to come in and access our computers, for example, or come in and check out when perhaps our hours that we're open are not convenient for them. In addition to this, we will be provided through this grant a minimum of 10 cameras in our first floor. Currently we have 4. And the idea is that gives us much better security, and obviously we'll be running during the day when we're open as well. The grant total comes to $33,000 plus dollars. And actually, as it happens, the project is, an installation is done through the state library and their fiscal agent, Khalifa. So we really don't get that in our hands. They're handling it all. This project also includes 2 years of maintenance. And then subsequent years, our friends of the library have committed to making the maintenance payment of $9,000 for this for us. We've used Biblioteca for many, many different projects in our library. Our sorter that comes into the building is a Biblioteca product. Our 4 of our self-checks are Biblioteca products. We're working with them also to do a touchless checkout where they scan with their card, and again, we've used them with their products extensively. They're very reliable. This particular Open Access Plus is used in over 800 libraries worldwide. It's been used in Europe for at least 10 years. And libraries are so confident with this. Many of them are, now the building is available 24 hours even though staff is not there. So it's been really tested and vetted. The libraries that I've spoken to here in California, up until the pandemic, are really excited. They said it really helps, level out that patron load. You still see the numbers, but it's over more period. It's really exciting and taking us further into the 21st century. Additionally, thanks to the very good work that Erica has done with the city attorney, it's allowed us to create a policy regarding closed-circuit TV throughout the city, not just at the library. As I mentioned, we have 4 cameras, and we do have notification up that, smile, you're on camera. But we now can present to you a proposed policy for your approval for all of us. And so with that's my deal.
Okay.
If I could add one thing to that, Mayor. Based on the council's recommendation, its determination to move to the CJPIA, a lot of our processes have changed. So when we talk about concepts like this that would have ordinarily just been a really good opportunity and just bringing it forward to council, we now vet these programs through the JPIA. And so in this instance in particular, they advised us and recommended that we have the CCTV policy brought forward to council for approval. So there have been a few instances over the last couple of months where we have talked to them, they've provided recommendations, and we do things a little bit differently. So this is one of the clear areas where we reached out to the JPIA, they recommended we do something different, and that's why we have this before you tonight.
Good to know that. Thank you. Questions, staff? I know the library is near and dear to your heart, so I'm sure you have a question or comments.
Well, actually, I had quite a few concerns. Kathy was nice enough to answer all of them for me this afternoon. But my questions and concerns were, okay, I read the staff report, I see what it says, but tell me how this is going to work in real life. And if you would share how this is going to work in real life, I would appreciate that.
I'd be very happy to, Councilwoman Krupa, Mayor Pro Tem. So to begin with, before they even open the door, the patrons will be signing an agreement holding the city harmless and agreeing to the fact that this is self-service. While staff will in fact be there, they're on their own. I mean, obviously, if something blows up, we'll fix it. But the idea is that it's truly, they're motivated by the patron. They have to be in good status, which means that they have fees below our threshold, which is $15. They have to be 18 and older, and only one person can enter on a library card. So they take their card, they sign our agreements, and then we have created, or will create, we have not yet done so, a borrower type that allows only that borrower type to have that access. So not everybody can just flash their card, type in their PIN number, and stroll in. Not going to happen. Currently, we are talking about opening on Wednesday and Thursday, allowing that door to be open at 8 in the morning when the staff comes in. On Thursday, Friday and Saturday, we can extend that to 7 o'clock when staff comes in. We do not plan at all for anything. Nobody's here, come on in. That's not at all in our plan. The libraries that I spoke to said typically they see, 2 or 3 people. It's not a thundering horde. We also will have the opportunity to limit the number of people who come in. So once we hit that threshold of 3 or 5 or 1, until somebody goes out, nobody else can come in. And like I said, staff will be there, so they're not unsupervised. Does that answer your question?
It does, but just as you were saying that, it brought up something else to mind. You said in limiting numbers. Okay, so the number is 5. We have 5 people that scan their card, go in through that magic door. How do we then know when they leave? Do they then
have to go out through the magic door?
Okay. Very good.
Which, by the way, the magic door is using our handicap accessible door because the power is already there. So we're using the other doors will remain locked. That door, once they scan their card, typed in their PIN number, will unlock to allow them in.
I think the key to what you said is they can lose their card, but it's a dual process to get in. Good, that's good.
And so there's accountability when they come in and their track coming out.
You don't know when they interrupt you.
I'm interrupting myself right now. I just wanted to make sure that there's that accountability and tracking, because I remember when I was a young boy and making trips to Disneyland with my friends, we had this grandiose plan that we could just hide out on Tom Sawyer's Island overnight.
I remember trying that. It didn't work.
And getting a second day for free. But then it was pointed out to me that there's cameras all over the place, so I want to make sure that was covered.
We got it.
No, we thought about it, but we didn't try it. We were persuaded.
Just if you could comment on the quality and the location of the cameras.
Yeah, the location of cameras will be throughout the first floor. Currently, the cameras that we have are, as old as the building. The building is
17 years old.
Thank you very much. And, a lot of things have happened with technology. Right now, when we look at cameras, you see a body. You don't see details. These are high-definition cameras. I have worked with the facilities and IT. IT is really excited about this because even if we didn't turn the door on, that gives us that ability for security in a way we don't have.
I'm excited about the security part. You've had your issues in there, so bless your heart. This is exciting. You have more eyes now, look. And Chris, just so you know, I highlighted on here the JPIA and the CCTV policy. So I was glad to see that you pointed that out, but that you added it in the staff report. So thank you. And then on your background, and this says in here, the system for self-service and additional service hours, you're not increasing your budget and staffing, you're providing more hours while you're there, as you explained.
Exactly.
So, okay, that's excellent. It was on there to make sure we have it. Thank you.
Yeah, no additional staffing.
So you're there, but you're not there to assist other you're there to do what the
We're there to do our
the work
normal
that you would do
morning
when
routine.
it would be closed normally. Okay.
And like I said, if somebody got really stuck, you know, obviously one of us would say, okay, I'll show you the one time, but you're on your own from here out.
You might have to, on certain people, maybe you'll have to count them as two
There you
if
go.
they're higher needs. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on item 15A.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution accepting a grant from California State Library for Biblioteca Open Access and establishing a CCTV recording policy.
I have a motion to approve the staff recommendation
I'll second that.
and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thank you very
Enjoy
much,
the-
Council. I really look forward
Moving
to
forward.
rolling this out. Thank you.
Item 15B is the authorization to enter into a license agreement with Riverside County Transportation Commission, RCTC. And it looks like we have Erica doing a staff report. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you. We also have Patricia DePremian from Destination Coffee. She should be on the line, just in case she wants to say anything. Excuse me while I pull this up really quickly. What I have on here really isn't anything you haven't seen. It's in your report. Just for good measure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk about a bilateral agreement that the city started talking about with RCTC in 2017. It is for the vacant lot that is on the northwest corner of State and Florida. It's adjacent to Destination Coffee, and right, the other business is the car wash, right? It's right there in the middle. So it's an RCTC property, and RCTC has no plans for it, and what their intention is to give a license to the city to pretty much do what we want with it at our cost. And Mayor Pro Tem Krupa was approached by Destination Coffee because they kind of had some dreams and ideals for the property. And after I talked with them, especially amidst COVID-19, they really just had a need for additional seating and some outdoor space so they can expand and increase their parking. So right now their parking is limited with their sharing with the museum. So Patricia and I sat, we walked across the property, and she just talked about what she thought that she can do. The cost would be borne by Destination Coffee, and the agreement has been drafted by our attorneys, and both agreements have been reviewed. RCTC is amenable still to going forward with the contract. So the background with that is we started communicating, we had the contract drafted, and it just was never executed. So we brought it back, we updated some information, we added some of the more updated legal stuff from our team, and that's what you have before you. So you can see there, that's the parcel that Destination Coffee is looking at. They're looking at taking half of that and using it as parking, and then using huge planters to create a division between the parking and any outdoor seating they do, and then doing some temporary covering, like you've seen with a lot of other businesses. So Patricia and Nick have been incredibly agreeable, obviously, and they are interested in bearing the cost. The one thing that they've asked the city to do is these, what I've learned, are called ballards. I didn't know that. They're asking that some of those be removed by the city so then cars can access that portion. So we've spoken with RCTC. They are okay with that because we will have the license, but that will be about $600 of in-kind donation that the city would give to Destination Coffee, should the council agree to that. With that, I will ask if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you for that staff report and work, Erica. I'll bring it to council for questions of staff.
Another question, maybe you know this, but is it I would think it's an exclusive contract with Destination. And my question is, like, if the city were to hold some sort of like a Christmas event or something, and then you could partner with Destination, or, you know, I think of all the things that we've done in the past or could do or talked about. That is always a perfect place. Do you have an answer?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if Patricia's on the line, I'm sure she would back it up. She has looking forward to partnering with the city. She's really interested in bringing traffic to downtown and making this a destination. So this really, for her and for me, after communicating, is kind of the ground floor for what we could do with that location.
I want to thank you, Erica and Chris, for the work you've done on this, because I did a lot of the legwork 3 years ago, and then it languished, and I really appreciate the fact that I didn't have to do a thing. I just said, this never got taken care of, can you do it? And I really appreciate the work that you have put in on it. The bollards, I do have an issue with that. Since RCTC put them in, why can't they take them out? We can get down there.
I agree.
Thank you, Patricia.
Oh, Patricia is here. She's here.
I'm here.
But that would be...
There are only 2 ballards that need to come out. There are, Erica, how many are there a total of?
There are 15 that our public works team counted, but it's 15 on the east and west side, so we would only limit that 7 on that side, and we probably only do half of that, so it's probably not even going to be $500.
You're saying that side is the west side?
Yes.
Because egress, ingress...
Actually, I would like to keep some of them up as barriers and only take 2 or 3 down just so the cars have access. You know what I mean?
So it really will be even less than $600 that we were quoted.
Okay. Okay.
I don't have any... I know this thing has been in play for a long time, and, you know, the agreement goes that when the Metrolink or light rail comes back into the valley, that RCTC does own that right-of-way, and, you know, they can have it back. But that, in the meantime, it's an eyesore. And if something can be done to have another space that is open for the people to enjoy. I mean, I've spent too many years on the board saving the station, and then with the Heritage Foundation to see that empty. So, and I know Patricia is a very, very imaginative person when it comes to having events done.
Well, I would love to get back into the game, so yeah, that would be a perfect place to do it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And Carly just asked, why don't they surplus it? Because RCTC does own it, and it is the right-of-way for the rail when it comes back to town. And yes, we do want Metrolink coming into town. And I hope it's not enough time. That's it. That's all I have.
Well, I think this is a good representation of a public-private partnership. Public, yeah. 2 publics in there. And I think, Linda, you might know somebody that's on RCTC that you could make that proposal that they fund the removal of a couple of
No, we
ballards.
just happen to have an RCTC meeting tomorrow morning.
So
I'll have a conversation with Ann.
doesn't hurt to ask.
Ask.
And I really like the concept, Patricia, that you've offered to put some heavy-duty planners, because with what I've seen around town and other towns for that matter, what they've done to accommodate outdoor dining, I have some degree of angst over the vulnerability of some of the table seating that's out there. So any measure that you're taking that's going to help provide a barrier from errant drivers and the dining public outside is a good thing. So,
okay, yeah, definitely. I learned that from my farmers market days.
yes, for sure. And there have been some incidents at farmers markets elsewhere, so you learn from experience. Yeah. If there are no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion on item 15B.
I would really like to make the motion to approve item 15B.
Well, why don't you?
I will. I make that motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation on item 15B. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Erica, for your staff report. Thank you, Patricia, for your input and partnership.
And thank you all very much. I'm really excited.
Okay,
Good night.
Good night. Moving on to item 15C, discuss and provide direction to staff regarding Assembly Bill 571 and the campaign contribution limits imposed under state law effective 1/1/2021. We have a staff report.
Yes, I can do that. As mentioned, so this item before you tonight involves a discussion of Assembly Bill 571, which makes some changes to the campaign contribution limits. So by way of background, state law currently sets campaign contribution limits for state offices. But there are no campaign contribution limits for local city offices. Some cities have established their own local campaign contribution limits, but there's no law mandating a certain limit. The governor, though, signed AB 571 back in October of 2019, but it's not effective until January, this upcoming January 2021. And the law says that local city elected positions will be subject to the same campaign contribution limits as set by state law, which are, as of now, that just as an example, individual and business donors, the limit is $4,700. For small contributor committees, the limit is $9,300. Those amounts change every 2 years, but that's what they are as of now. Also in AB 571, it allows a city by resolution or by ordinance to establish either higher or lower local campaign contribution limits, but that would take an action of the council, either by resolution or ordinance. Taking no action would mean that the state law limits would apply. Our review of the city's code revealed that there are no current local campaign contribution limits. So for your discussion tonight is whether you are interested in establishing higher or lower campaign contribution limits. If you are interested in establishing a different amount, our office would recommend that you adopt that by resolution before January 1st of 2021. Because that action would provide you with the greatest amount of flexibility. By adopting a resolution establishing your own campaign contribution limits, that would allow you to change those amounts down the road or in the future if that's something that you desire to do. Not adopting a resolution before January 2021 means you get state limits, and the law is a bit uncertain or unclear as to whether you could change them in the future if you don't have your own resolution in place. So the clearest course is to have your own resolution. It gives you the greatest amount of flexibility to change it after January if that's something that you want to do. So that concludes my brief presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Tom. Questions, comments from council?
So if we were to come up with a resolution that stated something to the effect of, we desire to set our own limits, we don't have to specifically set those limits. We can just say we have the desire that we would set our own limits as needed.
Yeah, so that would still be unclear in the law. I think the safest course would be to set a specific limit.
Or just go with the state limits because navigating this stuff is just difficult enough as it is.
Correct. You could adopt a resolution establishing the state limits.
Except that if we did that, we would not be able to ever change it if the city wanted to change it.
I think you could, because you would have your own resolution establishing that number.
I got you. So if there's a resolution that the city of Hemet has the same limits as the state does, that would be good enough to be able to change it later, or do we have to specify whatever the amounts are that the
I would
state
think
has?
that we would, if we wanted to model it after their limits, but I don't think we'd want to reference it as establishing a resolution matching the state limits.
Yeah, you don't really want to do that.
We could model it after their amounts, but it would be our resolution subject to our flexibility downstream if we chose to modify it. So I think we would want to steer clear of establishing ours consistent with the state, because that might imply that if the state changes, we would have to change.
Correct.
Right, and I would even hesitate using the exact same numbers as theirs, because it would, I mean, even if you make it off a table, they need to worry about their own problems up there.
Doublespeak is amazing in here. It's just like, you talk
Look where
about
it came from.
compound
No offense, Tom, but this stuff's written by lawyers.
That's true.
Company accepted.
Just put $1 million, we're good. Limits. We have limits.
Well, I think it's interesting and kind of novel that within this bill, they're allowing local government to set something higher or lower. It's too bad we didn't have the same flexibility with the state directives on COVID restrictions.
So I'm curious to know how that's going to work when, if we were to set our limit higher and then we submit our paperwork to the FPPC and the FPPC comes back and says, no, you violated because you were over the limit, but they didn't refer to Hemet's resolution. I mean, it just seems like it's going to create.
They want the accounting nightmare.
So I'm sensing that there's kind of a consensus that we desire to establish our own resolution. So
Well, I think doing so kind of gives us more freedom and more control in the future as to what takes place in the city of Hemet.
And you're right, it would present an FPPC nightmare because they could have limits all over the map based on how many local jurisdictions are out there.
Yeah, those people aren't freebie people like we are. They get paid, so the more work they have to do, the more they're going to get paid.
To be honest, and fair to the folks up there in Sacramento, they don't think very much.
I'm so glad I'm being recorded.
Okay, so somebody want to try to float a motion on this?
Well, can we just say give it back to staff to create whatever type of an ordinance with legalese that we need?
We just do council.
Resolution. Resolution, I'm sorry. Is it a resolution or an ordinance?
Yeah, it can be either. We'd recommend a resolution. It's easier to change. You don't need a first reading and a second reading. So we would just need some direction to bring back to you a resolution before January.
We don't actually need a motion. We just give direction to staff to bring back a
We
resolution.
should probably give them a dollar amount. I mean, even if
Yeah.
we say $10,000 just to be a blanket amount or whatever, but we need to give them some sort of number. I was kidding about $1 million.
If you can raise $1 million,
We're building a new.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think we'd want to keep some reasonable number. I mean, the farther off we get, then we get into just untested territory.
I think I would be comfortable just seeing a resolution coming back for us with a dollar amount in reasonable proximity to what the AB 571 establishes.
Some people should use their numbers.
Yeah, I don't think we should use their
You don't
numbers
need to
either.
correlate.
Do you have, can you just make a blanket semblance of what other cities are doing at this point?
So far, no, not any cities that I've been working with haven't established any limits of their own yet.
I know the county is working on.
County is working on one.
Jeffries wants some control.
I mean, even if you write up a resolution, we can always change the number once more people are coming out with it. But I mean, I don't know.
So just to start, it could be within the range that the state is.
Don't use the state's numbers. I mean, even if you want to.
We'll have it somewhere near.
Like if you wanted, I would do like 5 and 10, or you know what I'm saying, like something just straight, and we can change it as things come out.
Sure.
It's not like we're going to get it that fast.
Enough direction for staff?
Yeah, for me, sure. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Moving on to item 15D, our monthly update.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one notable update, which happened on August 28th. The state implemented a new blueprint to impose risk-based restrictions on sectors across the state. The blueprint is based on the following. At least 21 days to expand activities beyond the initial tier to ensure California better limits the spread of the virus. 2, mandatory metrics, case rates and test positivity to measure how widespread COVID-19 is in each county and guide what is allowed. 3, a uniform state framework with 4 categories instead of 58 different sets of rules. 4, a more nuanced way of allowing activity. Instead of open versus closed, sectors can be partially opened and progressively add to their operations as disease transmission decreases. And finally, 5, a new process for tightening back up again quickly when conditions worsen. Those were some of the that was one of the more notable highlights since the last council meeting. Happy to answer any questions that the council might have. I should note that in the consent calendar, the council did approve the allocation of just over $1 million of CARES Act funding for the city of Hemet to help reimburse the city for costs associated with deploying resources for COVID-19. So with that, Mayor, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the city manager?
Got a comment? Of course I do, right?
Of course you do.
So I understand that the governor came out with these new guidelines and that, but I'm starting to question what the motive behind what the governor's coming out with, because the CDC came out with some new guidelines, and the governor came out and said, well, we don't care, and when I say we, I mean him, doesn't care what the CDC states, and I'm looking at an article actually on CNN's website, but there's an article in here that he doesn't care what the CDC testing guidelines are because he's going to do his own thing. So my question is, and this goes back to a couple months ago when I wanted to rescind the state of emergency, it goes back to we're not really relying any longer on the science behind COVID and the actual numbers, because I went over some numbers at the last council meeting that were published by the California Department of Public Health and the Riverside County Public Health that didn't mesh with the whole complete shutdown, doesn't mesh any longer with being in an emergency, because we're actually seeing what this virus is doing now, and we're still making, and when I say we, I mean what they're doing in Sacramento, or the emergency services coordinator at the state, who just happens to be the governor. He's doing his own thing, and he's not relying on the science, so it's no longer part of the science. So I'm starting to not really trust what he's putting out, because it's not making any sense. Our people need to get back to work. Our kids need to get back in school. All of these high-level doctors at the federal level have all publicly stated that they would absolutely send their kids back into school, because the numbers don't dictate that kids are affected by this virus as older adults are. So that's my concern with what the governor's putting out. So and thanks for pointing that out, that he came out with new stuff, but the governor's own word says that he doesn't pay attention to what the actual scientists and the doctors were saying. So this to me has no longer become a medical issue. It's now become a pure political game that he's playing. That's all I have for now.
The good news on that is that Orange County did move to red. Orange County moved
Well, good
to
for
red.
them. We should all be given the green light to get back to work.
Yeah, but the governor said there will never be a green light.
Well, that just goes to show that it's not about the science any longer.
That's exactly true.
Okay, well,
Good job, city manager.
thank you for the thank you for the update.
No response is the best response.
Okay, there's no action required on this. It's informational only, so we'll move on to City Council and the staff reports. Councilmember Meyer is up first. Anything new to report? And we still have
Even my Zoom was dark.
about 14 minutes before we have.
Oh, I'll take it up. Even my Zoom meeting from my Community Action Partnership was dark as night. So, okay.
Okay, I got nothing.
He's just looking at me like you're not going to do 14 minutes.
No, maybe I misread the time. So we do. So, Michael has nothing. Mayor Pro Tem?
I do. We had our water master meeting for the quarter, and you put my tongue on me. And anyway, the main thing that came out of that was that we're tentatively approving next year's budget. This year's budget came in under budget, which allows us to keep the same level of assessment fees for all of the participants in the water master. League of Cities, of course, the conference is coming up in October, which should be interesting to do everything virtually. Ramona Bowl, they're still continuing with building improvements up there and have really gotten a whole lot of stuff done. RCTC is tomorrow. RTA is dark. Southern California Association of Governments, we had a huge meeting last Thursday. And one that started, I think, at 9 o'clock and got over at 3:30 in the afternoon. But through that, the Connect SoCal program of transportation, both goods movement, car movement, pedestrian, bicycles, you name it, everything that is going on was approved. But through that, there was a presentation by a lady who is in a new position at Caltrans. And part of her presentation was the fact that a committee at the state level in Caltrans and CTC has been created to look at how to decrease pedestrian involvement with traffic and bicycle involvement with traffic. Through that presentation, she said that the state is looking at the 85th percentile rule that deals with setting speed limits because it is archaic, it is damaging to our pedestrians, traffic, and everything to just say that the faster you go, the more we're going to reward you with a faster speed limit. And all of us just went, oh, you're kidding. How many years, how many years
could
did
have
it
had
take?
a V8.
Yeah, could have had a V8. So that was a really good news.
Very good news.
It may take another year or two for it, to get all shook out, whatever. But in the meantime, and I don't know this for a fact, but since it's under study, is that a legal avenue for cities to take to not go and abide by the 85th percentile when setting speed limits on city streets?
That's very good news. And there's some really good recommendations of alternatives that NHTSA has.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, emails and suggestions are welcomed by this committee. So any input from the city on these things, absolutely weigh in on the whole thing, because if the cities don't weigh in on it, they're going to do what they want. So let's see it done. But I really would like a legal, if we could get a legal ruling on that since it's under study, if that's a legal way out, then we need to take it. But yeah, I thought you'd be very, very happy with that one. I clapped too on my Zoom meeting that this was really finally a step forward. So that's all I have.
Okay.
See, it didn't even take 14 minutes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
I thought, no, you're not actually got to do it.
I made you nervous by reaching over there?
Not fast.
Okay. So, I was an alternate. I listened in on the Water Master Board meeting that occurred. It is kind of nice to be able to participate with these Zoom meetings, and I have a feeling that those practices may continue once we get past the pandemic. There is one thing I just want to report. I got notice from WRCOG that Rick sent us an email that there was a single-engine small plane that made an emergency landing in the habitat area, and it was able to fix their malfunction, and they took off again from there. So my question to Rick, and I didn't get an answer yet, but I don't think any of the Stevens kangaroo rats were harmed in the process of that, so I think our inventory is still okay. WRCOG meeting is tomorrow, as is the WCE Energy Board meeting is also tomorrow. So I'll be getting information on those activities later. So, ad hoc committee reports. Florida Avenue, nothing new to report.
It's there.
Okay. Council protocols. Linda and I have had a meeting as recently as this afternoon. What we did is we took the draft protocols that were presented as part of the work study that we had and independently went through them line by line, page by page. Today we put together, in our meeting, we took our independent work and went through page by page, line by line, and collated the comments. And so what we're going to do with that is we'll take the collated version, create a second draft, and we'll be bringing that forward in the near future. So I envision that the net result of this is at some point we'll have a work study on the final draft that the ad hoc committee comes up with, and go through with that. So ideally, I think it would be beneficial if we conducted that work study after the election, because we'll have all 5 seats filled. So it would be worthwhile to have the input of 5 council members. So that's the update for the council protocols. And City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have a couple updates, actually a few. Last Thursday morning, the Measure U committee did meet to go over the 1819 CAFR. They will be developing some correspondence, a letter that will be brought to council in the near term. The second item is the police department, fire department, public works, and engineering, and I had a chance to look at the EVP, the Opticom system that was set up along Florida Avenue. We got to see it live and operational in about 3 or 4 different locations. So we're making sure that our PD and fire department crews are able to make it work. So they're continuing to monitor that. There was a couple locations that still needed to be finalized, but we have note of those, and we're making sure to send the teams out to make sure that they do work as designed. And then the last item, I know Councilmember Percival was on the Zoom call with the Southwest Riverside County Association of Realtors. It's an incredible event. I always look forward to going to that. This year was a little bit different, but provided some good information about the development activity that's happening in our city. I provided a copy of that to the council. I would love to coordinate a presentation be done with HP and I to talk about some of those items and collectively provide that presentation to the community so that everyone can see the good work that's going on in our community. That concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And now moving to future agenda items. We have, we were going to address several of those, but we had to postpone our study session on some of these items. Anybody have anything that they feel compelled?
I have something. I move that we put on the agenda some sort of a legal review, or we need to have something brought back to us on the Hemet Youth and the Brubeck Park thing. I just looked it up, and on the Secretary of State page, Hemet Youth Baseball is suspended as far as a nonprofit. So, and we need, like, as soon as possible, and also with the possible contract violations, because the intention was to let them use those fields for recreation baseball for the community, and instead it's being used for raising money. And those tournaments raise an incredible, I mean, my boys play ball, and we pay big bucks for those tournaments.
Okay, so
we're making a lucrative business out of that.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to add legal review on Hemet Youth Baseball and field utilization.
Can we add that it goes to the top of the list, like one of the next council meetings?
So based on the calendar that we provided to council, we will need to push out, if the council desires to do that, we'll just need to push out the items that we had scheduled. So if that's okay with the council, we would just remove items that we had planned for September. Now, we're pretty much tied up September and October, so we could certainly just remove the item that was next scheduled up after the attorney item and bring that one.
You're talking about the items that were supposed to be today? We're going to move
No, so that one will just get pushed to the next one, and then we had a calendar of what was to go on the second meeting of September, the first meeting in October, and then so on and so forth. So I would just take the one that came after Tom's, which I believe was a discussion about the parade, Christmas parade. We would just push that out.
The thing is if legal reviews it and finds that it is a violation, then it would just be an action item.
Correct.
So depending on, because we don't need a lot of time to discuss this. This is a no-brainer. I mean, just the basics of what they said in the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
If we could just legal opinion on if the contract and if they're suspended, and also if they're putting on these tournaments in against quote state guidelines. Valley-wide can't do it. How can they do it?
So it just goes.
Because we said that we're not enforcing.
We're not enforcing those.
But still.
Health department can.
But if they and if the health department actually has given them a letter grade for their snack bar, so I had already told these folks to call the health department regarding the. Yeah.
I don't want to have too much of a conversation without this being agendized, but I can just state that based on the initial concerns that were conveyed, initially brought to my attention about maybe a week and a half ago by some of the members that were here, we are looking into those items that were brought up. So I'll just leave it at that without getting into details.
Hopefully it won't be some big project.
Well, I would leave it to your discretion. You know the time factors, and I would say that this is certainly a priority item based on what we've heard tonight. So however that can be factored into the priority list and bring it back to us. And it may indeed just be an action item.
The other thing.
So we have a motion and a second to add this to the list. I believe you made the motion, and you made the second. So roll call vote.
Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Percival?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Evans?
Yes, passes unanimously.
The other thing was, and we've talked about this before, but having some sort of a investigation or proposal on what our options are for attorney services. And we talked about this before, but whether we have an in-house attorney or, and didn't we?
I thought that was on here.
No, and I didn't see it on here, so.
I was going to kind of touch on something
Oh, it
similar
is
to
on
that.
here. Well,
Oh,
it
yeah.
is on here, city
Attorney function. I was going to make a motion to add something similar to that, but there's ongoing code enforcement actions, items that need to be more expeditiously dealt with. We had talked, I want to say probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, about an attorney firm that does aggressive code enforcement. Is there something that we might be able to?
And even if we're looking at an in-house, I mean, maybe that would be an in-house position just to address that. If that's our most used person, I don't know. Just think about that. I think that we need to do something.
Would it be reasonable to just fold that in since this says city attorney function? Could that kind of encompass what you're suggesting, or do we need actually a separate?
I think it's something separate because it's a separate attorney firm that, Chris, you know the name of the firm that does this code enforcement.
We talked about it, I can't remember when, but we did talk about it.
It goes back to, like, we're seeing ongoing and repetitive enforcement issues that should be dealt with. The street vendors that aren't in compliance.
Then I'll make a motion to add code enforcement efficiency plan for future agenda items. Because then it can be, you guys can.
Does that give you enough direction on that?
Yeah, assuming the council was on board with that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay. Code enforcement in efficiency. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second to take a look at legal options for code enforcement. Or efficiency, right? A more efficient
May entail more than what we're thinking that he may have.
Okay, you got the gist. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilor Meyer?
Yes.
Councilor Small?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Krupa?
Yes.
Mayor Brown?
Yes, that passes unanimously. Okay, we do have the housing authority tonight. So I will recess the city council meeting and allow Michael to
Get back to my agenda. Okay, if I can get a roll call for the Hemet Housing Authority.
Here. Board Member Krupa?
Here.
Board Member Meyer?
Here.
Chair Percival?
Here. Okay, up next, communication from the public. Do you have any requests to speak from the public?
No, Chair, there are no requests to speak.
Is there anybody on the line that wishes to speak on the Housing Authority?
No, Chair, there are no members on the public line.
Perfect. And then the next one is the consent calendar. Can I get a motion on that? Or is there anything that needs to be removed? Seeing nothing being removed? No? Item 4A and B.
Oh.
The minutes. And then 4B is a resolution authorizing the executive director to sign the owner statement pursuant to California Government Code.
Motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay, so moved.
Second. Can I get a vote?
Yes.
Board Member Meyer?
All right, so there's 4 yeses.
We are trained.
We're going to go through this quickly. I can see that. All right, item number 5 is a discussion item, the Hemet Housing Authority reorganization. Can I get a nomination for the office of Vice Chair to serve until December 8, 2020?
I nominate Russ.
Okay. I have a nomination and a second. Can I get a vote, please? Yes. Yes, okay, there's that. All right, thanks for getting us through this fairly quickly. Are there any future agenda items for the Hemet Housing Authority? Hearing none, I will adjourn the Housing Authority. Okay, we're reconvening to adjourn the City Council meeting, and tonight I'd like to, even though it's a couple days early, I'd like to adjourn in memory of the 19th anniversary of all those that we lost on 9/11/2001, all the first responders and the innocent victims of the terrorist attack. Please keep them and their loved ones in your hearts. And with that, we stand adjourned until our next regular meeting on, was it 28th? 27th.